Now I'm
run on the horse. It could be like, if you've ever played Diablo 3, it's like the Crusader pony build. What's up, Druid? So let's hop into it. One of the coolest builds that I've actually built this season so far is what I'm calling the Storm Approacher. It actually utilizes the human Druid, which did get some buffs, but like no one is talking about or playing it. And we are also getting the perfect storm in this build. So it's going to allow us to get extra damage over here. And we're going to be getting infinite ultimates because it's one of my new favorite things in every single Druid build. I've included the Minoric Ring, which is going to allow us to have infinite ultimates and 100x damage if we happen to get a good roll on the ring. So for starters, let's go over the gameplay playstyle. And I'm actually including two builds in one video. The reason why I want to include two variants is because if you want to be the ultimate Storm Approacher, as in a walking simulator build, I kind of made the build be able to swap into that. If you want to do like open world content or even doing some of the bosses, specifically like the Tormented bosses, this build will absolutely just walk through and breeze through most of the content. However, if you want to do the Infernal Hordes or high level pits, you're going to actually have to attack. It can be a walking simulator build, and that's what I originally wanted to do. However, in terms of like the higher levels of the Infernal Hordes, it's just not going to be possible. Just to keep your expectations realistic, I mean, most builds at some point will need to go farm Hell Tides. You're going to need to go do Legion events for some sort of materials or whatever you need. And this build is absolutely excellent at that because you could just walk through or you can just hold down the skill. So there's going to be two kind of variants, but they're pretty much the exact same in terms of what you're looking for. There's just a couple different like aspects that you can swap in and out and to make the build feel a little bit smoother and get more damage while you're just straight up walking. So it is going to be, at the end of the day, a Lightning Storm channeled build. So we're going to hold still. And what I've actually learned with this that's pretty cool is it's a build where you legitimately can just not even aim. The game will auto-aim. I can just hold this down, and I can aim if I want to with my controller or my mouse, but the game will let you just aim assist, and it'll just target whatever. It's basically the, like, super easy mode build, probably one of the easiest builds in the game, especially when you can also combine it with one of the aspects called Mending Stone, which increases the duration of Earthen Bulwark, which allows you to get unstoppable, meaning that you're not going to get, like, knocked out, which is a huge thing, specifically in the Infernal Horde. There's always times where you get pushed back, you get grabbed. There's a lot of that kind of stuff in this mode, so it's great for that. So that's where this build kind of excels. So now that we have kind of the introduction out of the way, let's hop right into the build. So for starters, this skill is optional. I like the wolves because it keeps the enemies at distance because they'll attack your wolves. Kind of like it for that, but this is swappable. That's the only reason why it's used. And then we have Lightning Storm, and Lightning Storm is great because it's our source of her damage. And then we have Infinite Cataclysm because we got the Minoric Ring. Then we have Cyclone Armor, and then we're also running Poison Creeper just so it can run on poison. You don't really need to activate it. It just kind of poisons things on its own. And then we use Earthen Bulwark. So in terms of how we play, we activate Cataclysm, and then we just hold down Lightning Storm, and we can also just spam Earthen Bulwark because it's like cooldown is like nothing. We basically upkeep it if we want to 100% of the time. You can actually swap Mending Stone for something else. It's kind of up to you, but basically it allows you to, if you want to, have 100% uptime on the Unstoppable, which is great. I'm going to show you guys two different variants of like the build's gameplay here. So now that we got that out of the way in terms of like our skills, there's actually two variants. So there are ones where you can play with Intercom Edge Masters, which is just going to give you more damage, but you can go even faster with Clear Speed, as I added these little lightning bolts. So it's called Lightning Dancer's Aspect, as well as Overcharged, which will let you get even more Clear Speed, because once you get your build good enough at Tier 7 of the Infernal Hordes, you can get even faster clear speed. This build is actually pretty easy to play because you just hold it down and it's just going to let you target things, and it's very, very efficient. But there is another variant that I have actually got over here that will not utilize that if you don't want to. You can play completely without the little like lightning balls that are kind of shooting around. It's up to you. But here's the build without it, so it totally functions without those aspects. In fact, if you want to be more tanky, the Doombringer can definitely be a nice addition to the build as well. But in terms of our Spirit Boons, we're going to be running Deer for the wariness, so damage reduction, we get extra crit chance as well as crit damage, and then we're going to get Calamity to make the ultimate last a little bit longer, and then this is optional. You can run Calm before the Storm, or you can run Overload. It depends on how good your cooldown is. As far as your build goes. And then as far as our gear, we are going to be running the Harlequin Crest. We are also going to be running Tyrael's Might. You definitely do want these. Harlequin is almost a must, unless you happen to get a greater affix cooldown reduction on like maybe like a Godslayer or something, and then you have triple Masterwork. You need cooldown reduction, otherwise this build does not function. Unless you were willing to sacrifice Ring of the Stars Skies and get the other ring called Inexorable Will, which will give you crazy amounts of cooldown reduction as well. So it's kind of up to you if you want to try to push this build earlier on. I'm just going to warn you guys, it's not going to do as much damage unless you have Harlequin. It's just going to make things so much better. You really need Harlequin and Starless Skies for the build to feel good. It does require Ubers. The Doombringer is optional. I think it just is way better because it makes the gameplay super, super smooth. You can see once you get the boss's stagger, it actually does a pretty decent amount of damage as well, as you don't really need it scale into damage to crowd controls, but there's like other bonuses. Once you have a crowd control target, you can even play like concussive strikes here. But as far as it goes, Tyrael's and Harlequin and Starless Skies really will make the build feel so much better. Then we're running Unsung Aesthetics Wraps, so it's just more damage because it's a Lightning Storm build. You ideally want to get as much crit as possible. This build will heavily benefit off of getting 100% crit, which you can actually achieve in this build. And the reason why you can achieve it quite easily is you can temper on Lightning Crit. It's, I believe they call it... another thing they call it like they call it Storm Critical Strike Chance. So that's what you want to try to get. Make sure you have 100% crit in the build, because once you have 100% crit, what happens with these gloves is they actually got a buff, so a lot of stats are just better. Plus you get damage to distance. That's why I like running the wolves. It just lets you kind of have like that extra bonus a lot easier. But also Lightning Storm gains additional strike each time it grows, and then Lightning Storm's critical strike causes lightning to strike twice. So when you crit with the lightning damage, you get to hit twice, and then it does more damage. So that's why you really want to make sure you're at 100% crit for this build. It's literally double damage. And then you can run Mending Stone, you can run the pet one, any other aspect here is fine. If you want to run Sabal, go for it, but it'll be a lot squishier, especially if you don't have Doombringer. But you can swap Doombringer for like Edge Masters or something else. And then Flicker Step, because it's going to give our Cataclysm extra damage, and it will help out with cooldown reduction if you need it. Now in this gameplay, I'm not even running Flicker Step. You can run a regular pair of boots with Concussive for more damage once your cooldown is up. The ultimate damage is nice. It's mainly just used because I happen to like have one, and I just wanted to get the cooldown to be a little bit better earlier on. I'm still missing out on a lot of like perfectly rolled pieces of gear, but Flicker Step will give you way more damage if you want to make it just like a walking simulator build, because it gives you up to 700 or like 800 ultimate damage. You get a greater affix one. It actually starts ramping up quite crazy. And then Doombringer is really good for survivability. Like there's so many builds, just this thing just makes things so much better. And then we also run Retaliation. We're going to have Fortification up really easy. We're looking really for crit strike chance and cooldown reduction on all your pieces of gear here. And then you also want to temper on Cataclysm, cooldown reduction. And then you can get Storm damage. You can also get Storm crit. That's what you're really looking for. And then Starless Skies over here, and then Monarch Ring. Monarch Ring obviously being super good, gives you the 100x damage and infinite energy, which is really good. This is how you get infinite spirit, which is a frequently asked question on like a lot of times when I'm playing Druid. Dude, how is your Druid infinite spirit? It's this item, man. And then we also run Intercom, because we're going to hold still the channel, but if you're running the other build, you can drop this for something else. But basically cooldown reduction, crit strike chances, what you're kind of looking for. As far as the gems go, we want crit, so yeah, we're going to go Emerald, Ruby, and then you can run any variants of whatever you need for the resistances. It should be capped here, but if you happen to not run Tyrael's, then obviously you're going to need to run resistances somewhere. So that's it for the skills. Let's go ahead and now hop into the skill tree. So the first 2 points do not matter. Then we're going to be maxing out Lightning Storm. And then I will include 2 variants. The other variant, you can just not put points into this, but you have to progress anyway, so you're going to have to put points somewhere. But since this is a Lightning Storm dealing most of our damage anyways, we are going to be running that. And then we're going to be running Predatory Instinct. Actually, you know what? We can make this much bigger. You know, shout out to my mobile viewers. All right. So you get extra crit strike chance against close enemies. Even though I said we get like damage to distance, it's because the build relies on damage to distance and close. It doesn't really matter what you're getting. Either way, now we get benefits off of both, right? But On top of that, we're running Earthen Bulwark. We want this one to get fortification. It's a great source of fortification, and then we get damage reduction. And you can pretty much just keep this up 100% of the time, especially when you happen to have the Mending Stone over here. Makes things very, very easy to upkeep. And then we are getting Nature's Reach, so more damage, and then we get all the lightning ones. Now, most of the stuff doesn't really actually do that much damage, but this lucky hit chance to like hit an enemy with whatever, it was extra stuff that if you really want more survivability, you can actually remove some of the points here. But in the open world, like this stuff is actually pretty good and just starts one-shotting people, which is great. Again, if you want more of the walking simulator playstyle, but these could be dropped. What this does offer in terms, like you need points in Endless Tempest, so this is a must. But the rest of the stuff, I mean, honestly, it's like a whatever. If you don't want to play it, that's fine. But what it does do, though, is if you do happen to, I would at least put 1 point into this where like chance to deal damage. Like this one's pretty good, and this one is when you have a lucky hit chance when dealing damage. You have a lightning bolt that also does damage. It activates some stuff on the Paragon board more frequently, but on top of that, there's a thing in the Paragon board, and there's a lot of things in Diablo in general, it goes for like all builds, where like if you happen to hit an enemy with like whatever, it ramps up the damage. Like every time you crit an enemy, like it'll do up to X12 damage on the Paragon board. So this kind of stuff just slowly just adds up a little faster, but again, it is really minor here. Well, we actually don't run any of the transformation stuff, so we can't put any in the shapeshifting, but we do want these over here. So these will give us extra damage, and then if you want to, you can run Circle of Life. I felt like that build was really good with Doombringer, but if you want to run like Inner Calm, yeah, you can maybe get Circle of Life as well. And then I had extra points, so Defensive Posture is just kind of cool. It just gives you some damage reduction, and then also Perfect Storm. Now, like I said, there are two variants of it, but pretty much they're very similar, and I'll go over kind of the differences. So, starting right off, we're going to be getting Territorial. Damage to close or distance is going to give you a bonus node. So, its first one is going to be Territorial, and then we move up to the second board, which is Earth and Sky. Earth and Sky, we want the Constricting Tendrils, so it'll poison things, and we get more damage with that. And then Nature Magic does more damage to the vulnerable crowd control. And then this one we're going to actually get at the end, so we're going to actually go to the right here, and then we're going to get Thunderstruck Keeper. So, over here, this is going to make it so when you get the damage to close and distance, you want to make sure you reach this. But when you have those gloves, they go crazy. It's really easy to achieve that. If you run the other build, you may need to get a few rolls on damage to like close or distance. Doesn't really matter which one you get, but that is something to note. And then this one is you do more non-physical damage, and obviously we do lightning damage, so yeah, that's our damage to archetype. And then we run Fulminate over here, so we get, this is what I was talking about, where we get to get more lightning damage over here, because that's what we scale. And then we are going to be going into Ancestral Guidance, Electrocution. So enemies damaged by your lightning bolts. That's the thing I was talking about, where they just take more damage. It'll activate faster. And then also lightning bolts and dancing bolts also deal more damage. And then the last one, we're getting Heightened Malice for this section over here. And if there are 3 or more poison enemies, which at the very end, the triple bosses, there happens to be 3. If you can group them up, it's cool. Then you can get that bonus. And then for the very final node over here, we actually get Spirit. So Critical Strike increases the damage enemies takes from you. That's what I was talking about, like you get more of those little lightning things. Those can do like tickle damage, but in the open world content, and again, at some point you're going to need to do Legion events so you can get your materials. It just, those will actually get all one-shotted by all these like bonus lightning bolts and stuff, so it actually makes the gameplay feel a lot smoother. But again, for the bosses, don't expect like little lightning bolts. And don't expect, by the way, this build to like delete the boss in like 2 seconds. It's going to take a couple minutes on the boss fight, which on average, I think that they designed this thing to be about a 15-minute thing, and with the boss fight, it does take a little bit longer, but the build is actually really good at doing the Infernal Hordes mode, because you just hold still and everything gets auto-aimed. It's definitely not as fast as the Lightning Spear Sorc, though I'll admit, that's auto-aim goes crazy as well. And then this is the other variant here. I'm going to include this one in the video because like the gameplay playstyle is the same. And like I was kind of just testing out in the Helltide to see if we can just make a walking simulator build. And it was actually quite successful. But I'll maybe make a dedicated video towards that, as I'm still needing to get some of the gears pieces to be perfect to make it like extra good. But I'm going to go and give this to you guys earlier. But it's basically the same concept. Instead of getting the Calm Before the Storm on stake, we actually go for Overload. And this will allow us to get extra little lightning things that come down, and then we drop the gloves for Inner Calm, and we can also get like Edge Masters here. Again, we don't need the other one, the gloves for the Unsung, because we're not going to make use out of Lightning Storm, but on the skill tree we still have to take points into something, so we just picked it up anyways. But the skill bar, it doesn't really matter. You can drop this. That's the only thing that would be a difference. Like you can play anything else here, but you need to put the points in order to get to the next part of the build. But then I'm running this just because it can pull in enemies and group them up. It could be okay, but there really wasn't anything super good in the other ring category, because remember, with Starless Skies, you have to activate to get the bonus, but it does give you a pretty good amount of crit, so you may need to get crit in other areas. But what this does offer is percent willpower, which is good, and then it gives you crazy amounts of ultimate skill cooldown. It also gives you damage to close, which will help out on the Paragon board, but depending on how this rolls, you may need to get a little bit more depending on your weapons and stuff. But obviously you're still running the Minoric Ring over here, and then you can, if you want to, you can maybe run Tabal to get even more damage with this build. I want to see if we can actually make this build at least do tier 7 with this walking simulator playstyle, because that's kind of my goal, but I'm going to need a lot of greater affixes in order for that to like really work. But it's pretty much the exact same thing. There's no difference in the Paragon board, but as far as the skill tree, obviously, yeah, like I was mentioning before, you don't need this. Again, I'll link it down below for both of the variants of the build, but like you don't need to get your core skills do more damage, because your core skill doesn't do damage. This one is a pure walking simulator Cataclysm build, which is going to be really fun. But anyways, yeah, that is the Storm Approacher Druid build that I was playing yesterday, and a lot of you guys were like, dude, drop the build guide. Here's like an earlier rendition of it. Keep in mind, I still need to get way better gear, but again, just letting you guys know, the boss kill time, it's still like doable. Like it's still like, you could still kill the boss. Again, it's going to take a little bit of time, but you can do up to tier 7, which I think is the area where I would say is the most efficient to go ahead and do for like all builds, just because it's a lot smoother. You don't need to get like, you know, double, triple greater affixes or like the correct master working on everything. It's a lot smoother to do at T7s, but if you really want to put in the time, yeah, obviously, you know, you can go as high as you want with any build, because technically there's no timer on the Infernal Hordes other than, of course, getting your like resources. But that's going to go wrap up things. If there's any ways we can improve the build, or if you guys have any questions, let me know in the comment section below and I'll update you guys. But check the pin, I'll have both of the builds linked for you guys, and have some fun with them, man. It's a really cool build. I really like the idea, again, specifically in Hell Tides and doing Legion stuff. I don't really feel like there's anything that really comes that close to it. Even though the Sorceress build, right, it does auto targeting, you gotta spam on the button. With this, I push the button and I'm just walking, and it's great. But anyways, take care, guys, and if you're new here, sub, turn on that bell if you want to see an update to perhaps this build as well as other builds coming in the future. I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.